It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey Not the Face with your host John Nash and your producer me, Steffi Haynes. And today we have an episode that's got two topics, mainly the UFC, and the other topic is about Riyadh season and Turkey al-Sheikh. But first, let's check in with John, who is currently on vacation, visiting family back home. He has very, very magnanimously joined us today to give us some wisdom on some very important topics. John, how the hell are you?
Acceptable, I guess.
Acceptable only?
Yeah, I don't. I'm just busy around here. I'm visiting my mom, and she's got me doing so much stuff for her.
You know what? You're a big, strong lad. You should be doing stuff for your mom.
Yeah, she's abusing me, though. She's really taking advantage of the situation.
What I need to know is how you're doing without Isla.
Like crying every night as I go to bed. But,
you miss her, don't you?
No, I'm not going to admit that at all. I'm a man, a real man.
You totally miss your cat. I know you do.
Yeah, you gotta shut up.
Well, you know what? Let me alter your attention a little bit. Let's divert it somewhere else. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about is Conor McGregor. And the reason why is because he's been making the rounds in the news again. Last week we found out that his driver's license has been suspended for 2 years thanks to several instances of reckless driving, to where the judge, I believe the words were appalling, how bad some of the instances were, and that he nearly caused a big collision at an intersection from speeding through a red light. And then, at Bare Knuckle FC's latest event, he went into the cage and it's so funny. The media that was covering it referred to it as aura. When he came strutting out with two of the Bare Knuckle FC ring girls, and he's strutting out and he's carrying his forged Irish stout, and he goes into the cage and very much in the stone cold Steve Austin way, he power slammed his beer, he power chugged it, and then he gets on the mic. And I could not get over, John, it is insane how much his gift of gab has left him. He was speaking slow, and the quips weren't coming very fast at all. It just was not your typical Conor McGregor. So my question here is, we're not seeing him at UFC events. They're not trotting him out. They're not doing much with him. How important is he to UFC's pay-per-view plans at this point?
Well, I mean, there's two ways to look at this. One is, I guess, is the non-important, because they are, the assembly line keeps going ahead. I think everybody realized Conor McGregor's days are numbered. I don't even know if he's ever going to fight again, honestly. But so if he doesn't fight, they can't have any expectations. So the machine keeps rolling. They have a Spear show coming up. They're going to get Jon Jones back. The assembly line keeps moving. And so it's not, I think they've moved on where it's like, we don't need them to keep going. But there's also the train of thought, and I guess it could work two ways, is they're in negotiation for a new TV deal, right? So it would be good probably to put a McGregor pay-per-view on to do blockbuster numbers to bring up their totals, so when they go to negotiate who's going to broadcast their pay-per-views in the future, because they sold them as a package, the ESPN Plus, that they have this kind of numbers to say, look how good we're doing. Every once in a while you're going to have these massive blockbuster events that are going to offset the ones that do terrible. And so in that sense, they might have an interest to try to get them back. But there's also the possibility there's another way to do it. If they're going to negotiate sooner rather than later the new deal, do you want McGregor back yet? Because another way you could maybe get a big TV deal on the next one is like, McGregor ain't going to fight until we get the next deal. And so not only do we sell a ton of pay-per-views? When we go to your network with our pay-per-view package, guess who we're bringing as our first pay-per-view? Conor McGregor. So on selling the TV deal, the next package, he's probably somewhat important because his numbers are what make the UFC numbers look really good. But overall, I think on their actual business plan, right? They are not thinking, I don't think, much about where Conor McGregor fits into the schedule. Years ago, they would have. Like, we got to have a Conor event here, here, and here, and we'll get 3 per year. I think at this point, they're thinking, if we get Conor, great. If not, our business is to keep moving ahead.
What about Jon Jones? Because here's how I see it. Dana is out here, and he is heavily beating that Johnny Bones drum. Johnny Bones is pound for pound. He went on this tirade a few days ago and was so mad that they don't have Jon Jones in the pound for pound spot. And he was screaming and he was saying that you're fucking stupid. He used those words to describe the ranking panel. That if you didn't agree with
the UFC picks.
Yeah. That if you didn't agree with him on Jones being pound for pound, you were dumb. So to me, it seems like maybe he's the last remaining big draw because you can't run Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje and the BMF belt every other week. You just can't do that.
Yeah.
So you basically have Conor McGregor and 2 or 3 others that can actually draw, and Jon Jones would probably be second to him. Does it seem like maybe that could be the case, or am I barking up the wrong tree?
No, I think that's a strong possibility. But Dana White has always been like, this guy's pound for pound, right? With Demetrius Johnson pound for pound. Convenient that he has a pay-per-view coming up. Khabib pound for pound. Convenient because his pay-per-view is following his. There's been a history of Dana White claiming guys are pound for pound with their pay-per-views are coming up. Now, Jon Jones doesn't have a pay-per-view immediately coming up. But I think you're onto something that he is the next biggest draw next to Conor McGregor. But also not just that, his fight, even though historically he hasn't been one of the mass, he's a star in a draw. Let's be clear. People, I think, underestimate his appeal. But he hasn't been one of the massive sellers of like a Brock or a GSP historically, or Anderson Silva with the right opponent. Anderson was huge sometimes, or Ronda Rousey. He hasn't been that level. He's been the next tier down. But at this point in his career, and because so many maybe casuals are familiar with Stipe, even though he's not really a draw, but based on what they were selling in New York last time, the tickets, I think there's some interest that event will do big. And as we mentioned about Conor, the TV deal is coming to an end. I think they're hyping Jon Jones as number one and as much as possible because they want a massive event out of him because, they get money. Not only that, actually they don't get money because it's a set guarantee deal, flat deal per pay-per-view basically. But it sets the level. It raises the level of total sales that they can go then bring to the next buyer and say, you should pay a lot of money because we sell a lot of pay-per-views. So I think you're onto something there. I think the hyping of him as pound for pound number one, even though I don't know why, even if you thought Jones was number one, why you'd be number one after 15, 16, 17 months since your last fight. Eventually you lose your spot, right? I don't think Dana White's quite familiar how the ranking systems are supposed to work in pound for pound. But anyways, and also how you measure smaller guys more and all that stuff. But never mind that. I think the number one reason he's doing this is they are trying to build up that Jon Jones fight because they want massive sales so they can go to negotiate the next deal, just like we're talking about with the McGregor one.
Let's go back to McGregor for a second. How much do you think he has contributed to the massive success of the UFC over the last 10 years? Now, Conor's been with the promotion for, I believe, 11 years. So how much would you say over the past decade?
Well, you can't put a set number, but we do know that when you look at the top gates, right, almost every top gate is his. And one of the top gates just recently was one that he was on and then dropped out. People didn't get back their tickets. So he is almost, the highest gate ever was UFC 205 versus Eddie Alvarez. I think what was the next highest gate was UFC 200. He wasn't on, but then you have the Diaz's fights. You have the Dustin Poirier fights. Of the top 10 fights, I don't have it in front of me. Probably like 7 of the top 10 fights are his, and the number 1 is for Gates. You've got the top pay-per-views are all his, except for UFC 100 and UFC 300. And I think the top ones are all his, Khabib and the Poirier ones. And so he is a tremendous star. Their deal with ESPN, it's the $200 million per year is supposedly average. I think we know it's about $20 million per pay-per-view right now. That a large part is probably because of the numbers he was doing, and they could bring that to ESPN and get that kind of deal because they were kind of consistently selling a lot of pay-per-views because he was consistently fighting back then. So I can't put a number down with how much is from the total business, but it seems clear to me his events have generated massive amounts of money, of which he's gotten 1/6 the revenue when he fights or less. So they're huge, and because their costs are mostly fixed, his events are probably the most profitable events in UFC history, right? So they are making their biggest margins, and even on why their TKO stock is to the roof is partly because of what he did. And then on top of that, he did bring in, it seems, a lot of fans and a lot of interest. So I can't say a specific number, but it is pretty clear that he has played a tremendous part in the UFC's success. You got to go back to like Tito and Liddell in 2005-06 type of impact, right? Mm. That kind of thing. Or remember, we had a point when Brock won the title, how much more popular the UFC suddenly got.
Yeah.
How much more his events did.
That's right.
I would argue, because of his impact in international pay-per-view sales, I would say that, obviously McGregor's brought a lot more money than all those guys combined, but as a percentage of the growth of the industry, he's probably played as big as part as those guys have.
Okay, now let me ask you this. They have made this concentrated effort, and we've noted this for probably the last couple of years, but they've made this concentrated effort to sort of promote brand over fighter. Do you think that's going to end up biting them in the ass, that they're not building stars to give them these pay-per-views that they need? To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Okay, the face!